We go to the phones, and joining us this morning, Republican strategist, great friend of the show, it's Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you today, sir?
How are you?
Doing great. Good to talk to you, and glad to have you on the program. I guess we'll start with with what's going on here in Texas and the election today. What will you be paying attention to besides the constitutional amendments and how those turn out? Are there any races that you're going to be watching tonight with any interest?
On the constitutional amendment side, I think the only real amendment that is getting much attention is Proposition 4, which would increase the threshold required to put an income tax in place in Texas from a majority to a supermajority. So that's really the biggest one on the constitutional amendment side. To your question, though, Chad, I think there's probably two other races of interest. One is there's a state rep special election first round tonight for former state rep John Zerwas in kind of a swing district area in Fort Bend County. That very well, we'll have to see how it goes tonight. The Republican could win. There's, I think, 8 or 9 or maybe 10 candidates running, so it's almost surely going to run off. It'll be interesting to see who gets in the runoff. Some national Democrats have poured in there. Pelosi has been involved. I think Beto O'Rourke went door to door with one of the candidates. So we're watching that to see what the margins look like and if that's a seat Republicans can hold. It doesn't matter that much. It's just a special election, so it won't affect the next legislature, but it is one to watch in terms of just kind of what the political environment looks like. I think the other race to watch is the Houston mayor's race. You have a fairly weak incumbent in Sylvester Turner, former state representative, who's up for re-election. He's been challenged by a millionaire trial attorney, Tony Busby, and also Bill King, who ran last time and nearly defeated Turner in the runoff. I don't know that there are necessarily significant ramifications or predictions that race will tell. That's really been a local race focused on local issues, so I don't know that it really tells us much about 2020, but it's certainly a race a lot of people are watching.
Matt, I saw a headline, and these happen anytime there's an election or a special election, that this may set the tone for 2020. And I saw another one of those headlines today that elections around the country today may set the tone for 2020. Do you buy into that, or is there just still so much time and so many unknowns, like who the Democrat nominee is going to be, that we really may not be able to take much away from anything tonight in regards to 2020?
Yeah, that's generally my sense as well. I think we know enough to know that if Republicans have a good night tonight, that very few people in the national media are going to say, okay, maybe Trump's in a stronger position than anyone thought, right? The only real news story they're looking for is if, let's say, the Republican loses in Louisiana or maybe Matt Bevin loses in Kentucky, or if they were to lose, one of the House of Delegates in Virginia. If any one or more of those outcomes were to happen, surely they would try to attach Trump to that. I don't think ultimately tonight's results tell us very much. Number one, these elections are occurring exactly 1 year before the next election, right? So the political environment a year from now is going to be very different than it is today. Number two, Trump is not on the ballot, right? And so he's not turning out his voters. He's not mobilizing. He's not running his reelection campaign with significant organizational and financial advantages. And then, number three, these are local races in local areas with local candidates on local campaigns. And so I just don't know that it tells us that much. I think directionally, can it tell you something? If the suburbs were to look bad for Republicans tonight, maybe that's something that that it could tell us. But I think sometimes we overinterpret either special elections or off-year elections. We want to kind of take away major conclusions from these elections, and more often than not, it doesn't really tell us very much at all.
Yeah. Visiting with Matt Mackowiak here on the program. Let's see, before I want to ask you about the homeless issue down in Austin, but before I get to that, Nancy Pelosi over the weekend expressed some concern that the 2020 Democrats weren't going in the right direction to win in 2020. Basically, with this idea of Medicare for all and some of these other more socialist ideas. Do you think Pelosi is that worried that the nominee is not going to be someone named Joe Biden?
Yeah, I think her concern is probably a little bit less focused on the individual nominee and a little more focused on the ideology. She's really been pretty resistant to Medicare for all, which is kind of amazing because I think, Chad, we probably all presume that she's pretty liberal and pretty progressive, and if it were up to her by herself, she would support a lot of these ideas. But she obviously wants to hold her majority. She wants to maintain a strong hand as Speaker of the House. Regardless of how the White House race turns out, she wants to, maintain her majority. And she knows that to do that, they have to have swing members in swing districts, who are not going to be for Medicare for all, who are not going to be for the Green New Deal, not going to be for decriminalizing the southern border, those kinds of issues. So, the concern she's expressing, I think, is a bit parochial because it's focused on the House. But this is actually, a concern that you're seeing other people raise as well, specifically related to Elizabeth Warren and some of her ideas, but also more so to the 2020 election and to their nominee. There's concern that in the Democratic Party establishment that they are not going to have a strong nominee. That Biden is more maybe ideologically palatable to a broader electorate, but his own candidacy has been quite weak, and it's very uncertain right now. His fundraising's been bad. His cash on hand position's very, very poor compared to the other three strong candidates, including Buttigieg in that mix with Sanders and Warren. So, yeah, she is starting to sound the alarm, and I think she's doing that because she wants to hold her majority. She recognizes some of these ideas that are motivators in Democratic primary for president are not going to work in a national election.
Visiting with Matt Mackowiak. Matt, before we let you go, tell folks what's happening down in Austin with the homeless issue. It looks like some things are maybe getting cleaned up there.
Yeah, I'm starting to see some sort of marginal improvements. The governor came in on Monday and began using Texas Department of Transportation to clean out the underpasses and the highway underpasses where a number of these encampments have sprouted up. That's obviously an improvement. That's state property. It's unsafe for drivers and unsafe for homeless people to be locating there. And really a lot of those areas are quite disgusting, if we're being honest about it. So that's the step he's taken at this point. He's reserving the right to take additional steps if the problem doesn't get better. The council has made some minor changes, banning camping on sidewalks and in 15 feet from the entrance of a home or a business. But this fight's not over. The problem's not going away. And I suspect what will happen is we will put on the ballot next May an effort to reinstate the homeless camping ban. That's the only way we can ultimately turn the tide back in the right direction.
Yeah. Tell folks about your newsletter and your podcast.
Yeah, Must Read Texas is the name of the newsletter. We take all the top news from around the state, deliver it to your inbox every weekday morning before 9 a.m. 3,000 Texans receive it. You can sign up for a free one-week trial at mustreadtexas.com. The podcast is called Mac on Politics. Two most recent episodes are with two Republican consultants, Scott Jennings and Alice Stewart, both of whom are CNN contributors. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the web at maconpoliticspodcast.com.
Very good. Matt, as always, appreciate your time, and we'll visit with you later.
Sounds good. Have a good week. Take care.
That's Matt Mackowiak here on the Chad Hasty Show.